To call this Council and Budget Committee meeting to order. Madam Clerk, the roll call, please.
All members of Council are present. Mayor Redekop.
Thank you. There are no announcements this evening. There is no addendum. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? There being none, then I'm going to hand the chair over to the Budget Chair, Councillor McDermott. Actually, now that I think of it, Councillor McDermott, yeah.
Ready to go?
Over to you.
Thank you, Worship. We're going to start out with our presentation from our beloved Director of Corporate Services, Jonathan Jansen, who will walk us through the capital budget.
It's our first budget, 2024 budget. Just off the top, thanks to many who have a part in our annual budget process. All of you here, of course, with your questions and your input throughout the year and tonight. Many staff from all levels are giving input and helping us bring forward what we think is a responsible, sustainable, affordable budget as best we can. So tonight, we will go through, I'll go through the agenda in just a moment. Tonight does follow the October 2nd meeting we had, which presented the budget planning with the timetable of that. So that's a good reference, and that did set some of the initial preliminary known areas that we were looking at with all of our budgets. Of course, we have the three budgets, tonight being capital. We have a water and wastewater and fees report on December 6th, and then the levy budget together with the library presentation on January 31st. So in terms of format, I think I would have spent maybe a little bit more time going through some of these slides last year, with a number of you being new to the town as councillors. I will, in some instances, go quickly over some slides if there's anything you want to look into deeper. Of course, we will have time for questions after the presentation, but we will allow ourselves the time to go back and answer any questions or look for further information we want to press into. And of course, this is a very strategic time for us as we try to bring together all the different elements, not only throughout the year, but you as councillors have been hearing and are aware of through even last year's election. So it's a great opportunity for us to say what matters to us and what we value, and to think hard about what the future in our town looks like. So unless there's any questions to begin, I will mention as well that we have a hyperlink on the cover page here, but the report and appendices are on the town website and as well in our e-agenda. If you go to the budget and finances section of the town's website, you should be able to find all of this information there, and this presentation as well on the 2024 budget expandable section on that page. So this is no change, but I'm going to spend a bit more time on some areas, inputs and processes. A little bit different this year with some of where we're at with a lot of the different studies that give input to the capital budget. Risks and opportunities do change from year to year, particularly this year with some of what we're seeing. We will pause for presentation questions under item 5 there, and then following that, in the memo on your e-agenda to where the capital budget report is, there is the memo that contains all of the capital budget worksheets that we'll go through individually and allow comments and questions on those as we move forward. So, of course, we do have off the top, the first thing is our new corporate strategic plan after a lot of deliberation this year. So that is something we try to incorporate that into all of our budgets and reference it where we can and adapt to that. Any capital budget worksheet items that do follow a report that came to council earlier in the year, those will have references to those report numbers. And then just to note, this is something we say every year, just to kind of get a little bit more context for what the budget represents. It's a year-round process and cycle where certainly in the last half of each year, we're analyzing and reviewing submissions and forecasts to bring towards these meetings. A lot of work, again, from all staff to do that. And then approval, we'll note the bylaws that would follow for all of the budgets. That's the beginning of approvals. We do have changes, of course, throughout the year as well that we will come back to council with in accordance with budget policy where adjustments or amendments are needed. And then we're executing through our procurement office and in collaboration with all our departments, best spend with best value for all of these projects. And reporting back to council as well. We report a number of times on capital items to council. Of course, with our audit, which council just approved a couple months ago, but also with reporting twice a year, we close out our capital projects. We try to follow good principles where projects that are stalled or are not moving forward, we consider whether we close them and rebudget them or whether or not we need to make changes to those. And then as well with our second quarter financial report, we do bring forward a status update of all capital projects of the town. So a good opportunity to always pause and think, are these projects still representative of what we want to do and accomplish and to allow ourselves to make changes. The next point just shows the values of the historical cost. We're approaching about $500 million in historical costs, but we know, of course, the replacement values of those are much higher. Our last asset management plan established it to be just over $1 billion, and just with some quick math, that's easily over $1.5 billion in today's dollars for replacement value. So, and then the last point there, proposals, just some of the things that we're looking at as we're reviewing and prioritizing these projects. Certainly grants, we have a grants oversight team that's always trying to ensure we're as ready and we have enough projects in a design or in a phase that may be eligible for any provincial or federal or other grants that do come along. And we're eager to apply for as many of those as we can. Minimizing life cycle maintenance and, of course, cost to taxpayers. Modernization, certainly this year we've spent a lot of effort into modernization with our assets, with our now Public Sector Digest citywide program that we're in the middle of implementing, as well as addressing levels of service. That's something I'll speak to a little bit later with our asset management plan updates and creating economic opportunity. I just wanted to take a little bit more of a step back and look at some of the differences this year with where we're at. And it's not even unique really to where we are in Fort Erie, but it's a common theme within our province and beyond really, where I've just grouped some of the things that truly we're seeing impact our asset management practices and our ability to forecast. So off the top, as has been the case the last couple of years, really, inflation is a key factor with considering all the sustainability and affordability impacts and a widening life cycle replacement gap that I'll show you later. Growth demands are coming in various ways, and in whether it's housing targets or needs that are growing, as we talk about often, and even our labor markets, our ability to complete projects, not only with internal staff, but with contractors as well, just with lots of pressure with growth here in Ontario. Timing, this has been, I'll call it a bit of an awkward year in terms of timing with what goes into a capital budget. With our master plans, we're planning to bring forward the water and wastewater master plans next year. So we're bringing this forward in advance of some good knowledge and updated information, really. Space study is something, of course, addressed space for staff and for servicing the town needs is in this capital budget. Health and medical, there are ongoing conversations to address what that looks like for the town. Of course, our development charges or DC study is coming forward to council on December 11th. That'll be a key piece. But we've tried to align this capital plan as much as possible with what is in the development charges, but that was a real challenge this year to incorporate as much information into both of those and align them. Of course, there's legislative changes, lots of staff transferring of knowledge. I mentioned PDS here because of the impacts and coordination with development charges, but certainly across the town, there's a vast volume of changes and legislative and otherwise, and just growth needs that are driving a lot of timing issues for us. Funding constraints, development charges and debt costs, both are significant factors with changes in interest rates on the debt side in particular. And then other constraints, the growth that's a major story to this budget really does affect our levy budget. So we show the amortization impacts and some of the expense impacts of bringing on new growth, some of which and most of which is borne by the development charges where possible, but to the extent that it's not, it is placing extra pressure on the town to have to replace at the end of the life cycle these assets as well. Of course, that is offset by assessment and customer base increases, but those are a lot of the constraints that we're seeing. So the good news in terms of ways we're able to weather it, all with a bit of salt, of course. Inflation is settling in many areas, most areas, so that's helpful as we look ahead. Our balance sheet is positioned relatively well to the extent that we have risks with interest rates. We are benefiting from some of that with the higher interest rates, as you've seen in our quarterly variance reporting with our investment incomes and our reserve balances. The asset management plan is a perfect opportunity. It's something that hasn't been done in detail since 2019, but for us as a town to consider our levels of service and to reset not only the capital programs, but what assets should or maybe considered change in terms of the way we deliver them in the future, and also resetting the funding between our different categories. And then again, just the DC study is an opportunity to look ahead, revise our rate structures so that growth can support growth as much as possible. So some of the I just like to include this. It's a good opportunity for anyone following along or as a resource to hyperlink into some of the supporting policies that guide this whole process, our budget and reserve policies, the asset management policy the council passed, and so on. And then just again, the reporting side, twice a year we do close out all the capital projects that have been completed. So this last year, there will be some net to and from adjustments with our reserves, but we were able to return $1.3 million to the reserves. And I would just want to note too here, it's kind of on the opportunity side, but I haven't put it anywhere else in the presentation, but we've done as much as we can this year as well to recognizing some of those threats in the last slide to bring as much funding back to the reserves as quickly as possible. So we took a bit of an aggressive step with our second quarter report to bring $900,000 to both our road and storm capital reserve, which we knew were going to be hard pressed to support our plan. Also through last year's 2022 audited surplus, part of that was a $500,000 transfer to the road reserve, and of course through these capital closeouts. So we're trying to, as quickly as possible, return funds where they're not being used so we can have a best outlook for the future and know what our funding strategies are. And then just I would note too, the last point there for 2023, we did add just over $6 million in additions through award and amendments during the year. That's unusually high, as we would expect with our environment. So as much as we're trying to bring money back to the reserves, we're also finding more and more that while we're trying to be refined as possible with our budget estimates, we're also needing to draw on them more at times. And we've just noted even in a recent report on an award that, in fact, our road reserve, if all of the additional awards are awarded in the factoring of what we've estimated in the last half year, we will probably be for a short time negative in our road reserve. So again, just to show you how we're walking this tight balance of trying to bring as much back to the reserves, and we're also needing those funds immediately. So the asset management plan itself, last time was phase 1 for the province. We met that timeline with good timing. So the update we're doing now in 2024, This will include all town assets. So last time it was our core infrastructure, the ones noted above there, but this will be expanded to include facilities and fleet and all assets, really, parks and so on. And so we'll also be identifying and, like I said, reviewing our levels of service. This is really important in terms of not only knowing this information, but having it submitted properly with the province, because it is a requirement for a lot of different grant funding opportunities. And then just the bottom three notes there, the bullets, highlight some of where we're at with our program. So we're very fortunate, as you see year to year, of having a strong contribution annually from both our levy and rate to our capital reserves. So that base reserve transfer, as it is right now, before we consider adding anything through the levy or the rate coming up, that's at 13.9 million. The inflationary increase we've talked about it's kind of a compromise or a half measure of 884,000, which is a 6.5% increase over last year's contribution, or in the case of the levy, a 1.9% increase to the levy. So certainly we're trying to, again here, balance affordability and choose a measure that continues on the track of trying to put aside responsible amounts for the needs of our assets, realizing it comes at a very difficult time for all. An update was brought to council back through IS 18 in 2023 to give you an overview of our asset management of our core assets. So here you can see on the right, this is updated for this year from that report, the status of our assets by type there. So you can see, where green and dark red we're doing well. However, in some cases, such as stormwater, we are not doing well. And so we're doing our best still to collect good information and condition information to know how to best spend money. But, there's lots of pressures on maintaining each of those. And so I do have a slide, again, updated for each of these, a little bit of a report card explaining how the condition is assessed for each of these core infrastructure assets, as well as what our targets are and how we're doing, as well as the financing strategy with each. So, for example, with roads, the forecast spend, which is for the budget and forecast, so a total of 11 years, is $64.1 million. We currently are contributing $3.25 million per year. So as you can tell, that is not enough we're not maintaining reserves, and the potential there is, impacts to that levels of service. And then the replacement values are just taken from the last asset management plan. So those will, if all goes well, be updated a year from now. So for each of these, it's available on the website if you want to look at any more. Stormwater, sanitary sewer, water, and bridges and culverts. So happy to go over any of those in more detail. But again, the update we're doing in advance of July 1st of 2024 for the Ontario requirements will give a lot more thought to those strategies and those targets. So master plans, again, I would just note the wastewater and water master plans. Those are two that are targeted for update in 2024, giving us as best the information as possible to knowing what our restraints are and what our capacities are, and to make sure we're growing in the right ways and right areas as possible. The DC study is very much also a major theme of this capital budget. So as I mentioned earlier, with the draft is being prepared right now. This capital budget has been prepared based on that study. The current study expires in March, this coming March. So, we are wanting to ensure we find the right balance of growth, paying for growth, being mindful as well of what can help stimulate good short-term and longer-term growth as well. But really, DCs are very good at helping to keep taxpayer and customer burdens where they should be. So we'll be bringing forward that report on the 11th with some alternatives to consider. And there's, of course, other inputs and requirements, whether it be through the provincial drinking water requirements and even in consultation with external partners and agencies, we work with the region, coordinate there where possible. We work with our own library and other agencies and Niagara Parks Commission and so on in identifying needs and projects. So the total 2024 capital budget request is for $27.2 million. That's over 72 projects that we'll be going through following this presentation. And just to compare, last year's was, I think, $26.6 million. So in line with that, where you'll see when we graph it later is there's certainly a lot more pressure in the longer term with what we're planning. But here, the largest component at 39% is roads, bridges, and sidewalks. And you can see the different breakdown by area and spend in order with that graph. So the existing versus growth, existing assets is less of a portion this year with the growth we're seeing. We would expect that. So it's $18.3 million or 67%. So 2/3 of our capital program is to replace or rehabilitate our existing assets here in the town. Some of the larger projects noted there, including the West Main Street storm sewer replacement, Point Abano municipal drain, and the storm pumping station, and so on. And then on the growth side, it's $9 million or 1/3 of the program, including, as noted earlier, the Gibson Center expansion. And so these would all be the components of projects that are deemed to be new and therefore receiving development charge funding. So the financing is obviously the same amount at $27.2 million, but a change this year is that the reliance on development charges at 32% is significantly higher. And the reserves are a really key important part, but those are 51% this year. The other amounts there are the Canada Community Building Fund, or previously known as federal gas tax, of $1.9 million. Grants, that's the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund. We have some other amounts, including amounts recovered from benefiting landowners when we do capital construction on municipal drains. So with those reserves, the 51% is $13.9 million. I'll graph out the contributions and the balances shortly, but those are some of the amounts for this year. From 2018 to the proposed 2024, the total asset management plan actual contributions year over year. So if you focus on the top dark blue line, not the very top line, but that would be the amount we've grown during those years. So excellent work to get from just over 10 to just over 15 million if the way we've proposed things for right now. So that's a large increase, but does reflect, particularly in the last 2 years, the increasing pressures. So the very top line is more of the bad news in this case, where if you look at, depending on which construction indice you look at, that gap has widened, even though we had closed it from our available information in 2021. That gap would have widened now from anywhere from about 2.3 to 6.6 or $6.9 million. So, yeah, looking back, we have a lot to be thankful for, but there's a lot of work ahead with trying to keep up with this, with this monster, let's call it. The capital reserve balances, here you can see how they perform over the full forecast period. The water and wastewater, the blue, and sorry, it does look kind of similar, but dark red there near the bottom. Those are the two that are experiencing a bit more of the pressure than others, but that's what we're working with over the long term, and truly scaling a lot of our projects to maintain some of these balances and bring forward what we can bear. This is the other very unfortunate picture we're looking at. I would say this is hopefully a bit of a worst case scenario, but when we look at the development charges and the impacts on growth, that's the line that goes waist down and to the right, unfortunately. Our development charges are expected beginning in 2030 with the plan we're predicting as best as possible at this point to go somewhere around $30 to $40 million negative with the forecasted collections we have. So there's lots of variables and impacts to what that actually might look like as we refine that every year going forward. Certainly the DC rates themselves will play a large part in that, and that's to be decided. But the pace of growth and trying to have developers, as we've talked about, up front and as much of the cost as possible so that we're pushing some of the reserve draws down the road as much as possible. And I'll just throw in lastly that the province has said they will make us whole. So we don't know what that looks like, but certainly these are the kinds of things that they've been tasked with or have promised they would look at when we look at the rate of growth and the pressures and the funding needs compared to what the DCs are expected to bring. Debt is one of our strategies with financing. We've been fortunate in generally keeping our debt low over the years, reserving it for mostly growth or new assets, or for assets that have some return or have enabled some type of benefit to the community. We have one that expires at the end of this year, and that's for the Central Fire Station, which is at the end of its 10-year term. Then we have debt that was previously approved, that's in your report in Table 3. So we previously approved back in 2021 already, and it was amended a bit, but we have $3.9 million related to Fire Station 4. That was delayed a bit due to some regional coordination of debt to be a 2024 issue, not a 23 issue. So that one we'll see impact our levy this year. That is something we had planned on. And the other one below that was previously approved is the Point Dubanow Road South reinstatement. This is one that the report speaks to as well, because we've looked at a number of options as we've gone through advanced processes with design. And at this point, we're not prepared to increase that with the information we have. So we're only showing the portion for the cost that was previously estimated for those amounts. And the amounts, therefore, with the year-end balances will have increased for 23, and then with the other upcoming amounts being debt proposed, that would also increase. So I'm only showing the years that relate to the amounts that we forecast with our operating budget, which is a 1 year plus 2. So for 2025, we're showing $3.5 million for 15-year debt for 6 Mile Creek flooding. However, that is in the absence of any and all other funding we might be able to seek for that with other programs. We're truly hoping to minimize that cost to the town, but that's been included and forecasted for now. And so with all that, one of the metrics we look at provincially is our annual repayment limit, or ARL. And so we're mandated to keep that below 25%. Ours has been quite low, of course, and will be increasing, but even with the full extent of all of the debt we've shown, it would still reach about 3% within the next 3 years. So higher than we've traditionally been, but still relatively low. So here you can see, and the other one that would be an uptick in 2029 is in your capital budget package, and that's for Fire Station number 3 replacement. So here you can see ramping up after having drawn down debt for many, many years to 2022, but then with those 4 projects, and as well included in that increase for 2023 is the Jarvis Street, the Bridgeburg rehabilitation project. So that was as well partially debt financed in 2023. Other financing includes the Canada Community Building Fund of 1.9. We're dedicating funds for that. We can manage that over a number of years, but we're using $1 million of that this year for our Bridges and Culvert program. DCs, as mentioned, are $8.7 million. That's for a total of 24 projects, including the largest being $4 million for 2 Gibson Center expansion projects. And again, just comments on the DC and looking at all options there to help support growth. The last one is grants, $1.774 million or 7%, and that's being applied to those 3 projects. The 10-year forecast for beyond the current year budget is considerably higher than last year. Last year, this annual average would have been just around $19 million. So you can see this significant increase that has been pulled through into this year's forecasts. So the average being $31.2 million with a high in 2033 of just over $45 million. We do break up, as you're aware from last year, the capital budget into two approvals. One that can go ASAP. We have funding in the reserves to do so. We can pass a bylaw December 18th to do that. And the other, we wait until the general levy has been approved, which provides additional levy funds towards capital needs, and that's $16.4 million. Risks, okay, this kind of maybe got a bit out of hand, but it's, don't mind all the wordiness here, but I just wanted to capture some of the key things. Again, development charges, the program clearly is outpacing the rates and would require debt. So that's something that's beyond the operating forecast we have right now, but clearly we're showing the need for debt despite, efforts and efforts in the province to make sure that the bills and the legislative changes aren't impacting us as much as we're fearing right now. Inflation, again, I did discuss that impact. The operating budget, so when you look, particularly with this budget having so much additional new assets, we're looking at $261,000 of operating impacts. Most of that is amortization, so when we add an extra fleet vehicle or a road, we know that when that asset, when time comes for it to be replaced, the town then, despite development charges being available now, will be required to replace it. So it's setting aside responsibly those funds for the future. So that's 0.8%. So when you combine that with the 1.9% noted above for the levy, we're at 2.7% plus as an impact from this budget on the levy. The asset management plan has a lot of risks and opportunities, frankly, but we will be updating all of our information to see how our programs may evolve. If we want to be optimists, then hopefully as more condition information comes through, we find things are maybe not as bad as we may have predicted, but we will see. Debt, there is some concern regionally, and we're just still receiving some information, but that the region as a whole, with the way we acquire and have access to debt through Infrastructure Ontario or IO, that there may be constraints on our ability to do that. So we will be, as area treasurers, we've already talked about some alternatives from sinking reserves to other options. So OSIF funding, the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, we've included about $1 million a year. However, that, despite our efforts, we've not been able to have the province comment on whether that will continue beyond 2026. So we're trusting from everything we've read that that's good, important base funding in their budgets that they'll continue to support. And then just some other things, climate change, we talked a bit more last year, but certainly there's elements of climate change that we are expecting to have impact our capital budget, and we're no stranger to some of the events that have impacted us and shown the need for resiliency. Opportunities, so as noted, we try to attract as much grant funding as possible. That OSIF one, we will let council know what that amount is when it's announced. Any application-based or any regional program we've advocated for routinely, you as council have done work to support those and to ensure those continue where they're adding value regionally. Modernization is opportunities, as mentioned earlier, with our new systems, with assets, and with other areas. We're always looking to make sure we're staying up to date and future-proofing ourselves and adding efficiencies and where we can and access to information, not only for the town and planning, but for customers as well. Debt, the low current debt is an opportunity at the current moment for us. Of course, we've talked about adding on debt, but this really is we're fortunate to have kept debt low the last number of years for such a time as this. Operating impacts, asset management plan, some of the same themes as discussed earlier. So the key messaging would be the total capital budget program of $27.2 million, or a total 11-year horizon, so all of the 10 years beyond that we looked at earlier, of $338 million, funded primarily through capital reserves, the 51%, but an increasing reliance on development charges as well. The capital funding, we've talked in the past about having our asset management or our asset gap closed. That is certainly no longer the case. We'll continue to work as hard as we can to getting there again at some point in the future. And again, the operating impacts for the decisions of what we look at and approve tonight. Calendar is as noted earlier in the budget planning. It's just for information there. And that's the end of my presentation. I'll turn it back to Councillor McDermott.
Thank you, Jonathan. Are there any comments or questions with regards to the presentation? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott, to you, Jonathan. Jonathan, thank you for all your work and your staff. My question is going to be about the lack of a Parks and Open Space Master Plan that's current. I think the last one we had was done in 2006, that it was actually complete. And I know Parks and Open Space can have a big effect on development charges, or can acquire development charges. How has that affected your forecast? Because I don't see it in any of your things. I see a space study, and I see wastewater, I see this study, I see that for development charges, but I don't see a lot of comments about open space and Parks and Open Space.
Yeah, through you, Chair McDermott. We have a funding in place to provide an updated Parks and Open Space Master Plan. It unfortunately has been delayed the last 2-3 years, I think, if my memory serves me. So we are doing our best to get that to a place where that will be updated. Director Hurlovich can comment further if you have more information, but we do recognize that will help and bring some good information and updates, and hopefully align as well and somewhat with our asset management plan update as well.
Thank you.
Councillor, Director. As well.
I wonder if you could just repeat that for me, please.
Councillor Noyes, what was just your question again?
My question was about the Parks and Open Space Master Plan, that from my understanding, the last one I could see was 2006. And does that not affect development charges, because we don't have any plan in place as we're making these park and open space improvements. We're just kind of moving along without really a plan.
Yeah, I can't specifically say whether that does or does not affect the development charges. Certainly, we need to update our master plan that's been on the books, and unfortunately, due to staff turnover, that was not completed this year.
Back to you, Councillor Noyes.
Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Anybody else? Your Worship.
Nobody else has any questions, I'm happy to go forward. So I wonder if you could turn to slide 6. And that's the slide where you make reference to the contributions to our reserves to deal with inflationary pressures. And the bottom of the page, there's a reference to 884,000 being the increase. And I thought that we heard further in your presentation that represents 1.9% of our levy, but it's closer to 2.6, isn't it?
Through Councillor McDermott, you're right. When I was giving those percentages, I was providing just the levy portion. I didn't give you the water and wastewater portion, so those would be something similar to that. And sorry, I didn't provide those. So when you, of the 884,000, I think, I had the number in my head a while ago, but let's say 600,000 of that amount is for levy, and the remaining is for water, wastewater.
Thank you. If I might, Chair. So that means 1.9% of our operating budget is already being spoken for, an increase of 1.9%.
That's correct.
And then we have to deal with all the other pressures, including inflation.
Correct. Although we are conservative with this, so in terms of being spoken for, that's still a recommendation based on our budget planning and based on this. We show that amount in our 2024 increase column from our reserves, but we don't rely on it for a forecast until it's approved by council in January, should council choose to approve it.
Right, but I believe, Chair, that the reason this is recommended is because we're trying to maintain as much proximity to our asset management funding objectives as possible.
That's correct.
Okay, if we could go to the next slide, which deals with the condition of our infrastructure, and in particular, in terms of the stormwater infrastructure, does that include any of the natural stormwater or drainage systems that we have in town?
Through you, Chair. I don't believe it does. Actually, no. Stormwater, I'm not sure to what extent the asset management reporting does. We have separate reserves, both for storm refurbishing and municipal drain needs. In terms of this scoring of that, my guess is it does not, but perhaps Mr. Walsh would know.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's just hard infrastructure. Doesn't include natural.
And is that something that we're required to do going forward with respect to the asset management plan?
Again, through you, Mr. Chair, our 2024 update, which is under production right now, includes all assets.
Which would that include municipal drains as an example?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The next question I had was with respect to slide 14, which outlines or makes reference to the various breakdown. Looking at the preliminary capital budget appendix, it says that we're allocating $2.1 million towards parks and open space. You refer to this as parks and facilities and have a smaller number, 800,000. Is there an explanation for that?
Yes, the planning and development category here would be our parks and open space assets. The parks and facilities primarily is facilities and cemeteries. Less, trying to think if there's any parks, in fact, within the parks and facilities. So maybe that's something we consider renaming to avoid confusion. But yeah, planning and development would be most of the park program. And parks and facilities is the focus on facilities under Mr. Hutton's care.
Okay, and that just makes it a little more confusing, but we can talk about that afterwards. Slide 21, if I might share, and this has to do with I believe that's the DC line that drops to the bottom of the page. So maybe you could help me with this. This reserve fund, this development charge reserve fund, is supposed to be filled with money that's generated through construction, new growth. Is that correct?
That's right.
So what this says is that what we would identify today as construction required because of growth is not going to be adequately funded with the development charges that we're going to generate. Is that what that line says?
That is correct.
So we could remedy that by, I think, maybe help me here. Would one remedy be charging significantly more in development charges for the new construction that takes place? Or has the provincial government handicapped us to the point where some of the areas where we would need, or what we currently identify as growth projects, parks as an example, we can no longer collect development charges. Does that shut that avenue out?
The recent legislation, did change the parks component of the DC collection over to the community benefits charge, CBCs. But I think to what your first question was with what rates should we be using to address this, this is, at this point, our draft proposed, soon to be circulated DC study, background study, which with full rates, and some of the issue again is we're only able to phase in rates at 80, then 85 and so on % at the beginning of the program. But really, and the town has done this before. We have debt financed DC needs before with Garrison and Thompson Road projects, but there are some large projects that are driving within that 2030 to 2033 horizon needs that would, at this point, and this is unusual that we would show this without properly a solution to it, but the solution at this point would be debt financing, particularly those two larger projects that are being forecast in that time frame. Again, I would hope and expect that some of this deficit would be smoothed out into more of the future as we encourage front-end financing of these projects that are reimbursed through our DCs. So, but that's what's going on here.
So when I look at this graph, if I might share, this tells me that in the future, growth is not going to pay for itself.
Not at the pace that we're currently using. That's another thing where, these two, particularly the one larger one I know is it a pumping station, I believe, to the tune of $18 million. If that were to come online at that timing, that's our best guess at this point to try and at least reflect and capture at this point in time that we know that there's real potential within this 10-year horizon to include that. But yes, it does show if we were to build it sooner within this time frame, despite the rate collections that our DC should support, we're still woefully underfunded.
So if I might share, you had made reference to the province committee to make municipalities whole. If the province did that, aside from it being, in my view, a miracle, would that change the nature of this line on this graph?
I would say there's still likely some elements of timing that could still push our reserve into a negative, into a deficit, and some areas where we would still want to consider debt financing, but it's a wild guess, but it should improve that, yes. We don't know what tools they're really considering or what that looks like. I believe right now the latest we still have is that they're auditing 5 or 6 larger municipalities to understand what the impacts truly are. But a number of municipalities have commented publicly on the impacts of the DC legislation, as well as the region.
So if I might continue, Chair. So you can borrow against a fund that is going to be replenished. But you're not suggesting that this fund, under the current circumstances, is going to be replenished. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So further to that, Chair, then somebody's going to be paying that debt if we borrow it. And if it's not coming from the development charges, is it going to be coming from the residents, the taxpayers?
Yeah, it's a way to assign those costs over a longer period. So those debt costs would then have to be funded through the DC collection. So it's not the levy then bearing those costs. The DC would have to repay that debt itself. So we may have to do more debt financing on the DC side than just keeping us out of the red there.
So I'm not an accountant, Chair, and I know that Mr. Jansen is, but it seems to me that we're creating fictions with respect to a fund which is supposed to be designed specifically to account for the payment of the costs of growth. And I believe what Mr. Jansen is saying is basically that we're going to continue that fiction, but it's not going to be paid from the fund which is supposed to be funding it, it's going to be created from other people who are going to be putting money into that fund, and those other people are the residents. Isn't that where we are?
No, the other source of future funding would be from development as well, so,
Right, but not to the extent.
Right.
What you're saying is not to the extent that's going to be necessary.
yes.
So then, when we tell our residents that, don't worry, all this new construction, the new roads, the expanded roads, the sidewalks, the parks, the new water, the sewer, the pumping stations, the predicament that we're in the Garrison Road area in terms of how we manage sewage. When we say to the residents, don't worry, development charges has got this covered, that's no longer true because of the recent changes made by the provincial government.
That's right. Yeah, the town has to fund the additional amounts. And I know the report, actually it's our third quarter report coming up, also notes to the extent that we choose at times to have discretionary exemptions as well, those are also impacts to the town for discretionary exemptions for industrial, for example, at this point. And I would just maybe go back to this in caution too. I debated putting this one in because of the awkward timing component that I talked about earlier. My hope would be a year from now when we had gone through the asset management plan update, that we have an approved development charges plan, that we have more coordination of staff in reasonably forecasting out some of the works, that this will look quite different. But the issue, I don't want to be alarmist, but the issue certainly is still there.
I'm really feeling relieved, Chair. So it might not drop off quite as sharply, but it's still going to be in negative territory.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop flogging this horse shortly. I have one other question. One other opportunity, I suppose, for the residents to receive relief from this type of chart would be if the provincial government decided to get involved in a program that would assist municipalities in funding some of this infrastructure that we're going to need for growth. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, and then I have, Chair, just bear with me. Slide 29 makes reference to second line, CSO, combined sewer overflow, as a potential funding source, grant funding source. Is that a reference to the region's current program where they cost share?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Okay. Are you aware that regional staff is recommending to regional council that they eliminate the CSO program in order to keep the water and sewer rates at a 6% overall increase?
I'm aware of discussions over the last couple of years for some of these similar programs, and I'll remain hopeful that some of these that benefit both of us in different ways could continue.
It's in black and white now, and it's on the region's agenda for tomorrow night. But on that point, I note that in the material that we have before us, there are two major projects that would require about $3.151 million in terms of trying to eliminate infiltrations and inflows. Those currently are going to be entirely funded through municipal resources. Is that correct?
If you know which programs those are specifically, I can comment a bit better.
Okay, yeah, so one is on page 115, and that is the Catherine, I guess, sewer pump station catchment area project, and it looks like it's going to be development charges. Sorry. Nonetheless, that's a municipal, that's related to growth. And the other one, which is on page 119, wastewater trenchless repairs, that's from our reserves. If those both proceed and we are successful in eliminating some of the infiltrations, that actually benefits not only the municipality, but doesn't it benefit the region by reducing the flows that their wastewater plant has to treat?
You're absolutely correct, although I would comment on and this is a discussion for our water wastewater budget as well, but that the impacts to their costs are relatively small on the actual treatment side of volumes compared to the infrastructure costs of those treatment processes, facilities.
My final question on that is, for every cubic liter or whatever they measure it by, that doesn't go into our sewage system and heads to the Anger Avenue treatment plant as an example, or the Crystal Beach plant, that's 1 cubic liter less that needs to be treated, which does increase the capacity of the plant, does it not?
Yes, and it does increase the capacity. And conversely to what I was just saying with their costs, based on the current billing methodology and modeling, it does have a great impact on what we pay for our share of the treatment costs. So, excellent point. I would just maybe comment too that the timing was such that it wasn't able to make it into our capital budget, but we are looking at other water wastewater programs, which may be a capital amendment already in our December 6th meeting, but to try and accelerate some of the sewer relinings that really are shown in recent attempts to reduce our I&I.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair, for your indulgence. Thank you, Mr. Jansen.
Thank you. Just going on with what Mayor Redekop was commenting on, I'm kind of getting the idea that if growth doesn't pay for itself, growth then becomes a negative and a strain on the existing residents, right, according to your graph. Where does community benefits come in, the new funding thing that was introduced a while ago?
Yeah, through Chair McDermott, the CBCs, there is a paragraph in the report. We are not yet, with the information we have, forecasting. We have some indication of what the amount might be already in 2024, but it's a relatively small amount for the program, so we're not yet forecasting until we can get a little bit more distance beneath us with using that program.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, then we'll get a mover for the report. Councillor Lewis. Ready to go, Jonathan?
Yeah, so at this point then I would just, if there's no other questions for the presentation, have us walk through. So if you're online or if you're following along, the memo that was included with CBC 01 has not only the forecast, but beginning on page 9 of the PDF, the individual capital worksheets. So I'll just use this as an opportunity to go through with any questions we might have, beginning on PDF page 9 there with the Corporate and Community Services Program, beginning with the IT computer hardware project.
So we have the questions with regards to this one. Seeing none, we'll move on.
Chair, just as a point of order, so we're going to be going, excuse me, as we've done in the past, we're going to go through each of these page by page. Would it be appropriate for Mr. Jansen to sit down, or does he want to stand for the foreseeable future?
Which would you like to do? Mr. Jansen?
My feet are serving me well so far. I'll stay up here.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
I'd be sorry.
Okay, so any questions with regards to the Bone 24 bone replacement? And then we'll move along. Anything on the UPS battery backup? Keep moving. And now the AC Douglas Park playground replacement. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you. I brought this up in council before, and I'm all for replacing things that need to be replaced, but I would like to see the assessment of I know we have someone coming in, they assess what needs to be replaced, and what perhaps doesn't need to be replaced, because I think we have this all or nothing type of approach. I do understand that there's things that need to be fixed, and I know it's in my ward, But at the same point, if we can save money or add to the structures as opposed to taking everything away and starting afresh, I wouldn't mind seeing what the assessment of like what needs to be replaced and what doesn't, what still meets standards.
So you want to put this up now?
No, this is like, I'm just going to assume that that information is going to be coming before we finalize the budget. And there's a number of parks that we're replacing, and I would still like to see like exactly what no longer meets standards. And again, if we can add to it as opposed to all or nothing, I'd like to see that, because I think we have 5 or 6 parks that we're replacing, and I'm not sure all of them need it. And I hope that we get to keep the Dragon.
Are you getting that, Mr. Hurlovich?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, yes, I've made note of that to bring that back when this is moved forward.
And this particular park, I think it says 2006,
5.
yeah, and actually I think it was pretty much in 2004. But again, this park has lasted, it's going to be 2024 before it's done, has lasted 19 years, 18 years. And some of the parks that we're replacing are only, 13 years old. So that's one of the reasons for the assessment. And this is a very well-used park. Thank you.
Anybody else? Moving on to the next one. Crystal Beach Waterfront Park Playground Replacement. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question on this one is similar to the question that was asked by Councillor Noyes. I noticed this park, which to me is rather new, is built in 2010 and is AODA, does meet the requirements of AODA for 2010 because it does have the accessible swing and a few other amenities. I notice in there that it mentions a concrete ramp and some curbing, but again, my question on this would be, is that something that could be done with the current equipment that's already in place with maybe some maintenance improvements to the park itself? I didn't get a chance to go look at it prior to this meeting, but to me, this is probably one of the newer parks, certainly well-used parks, but my question there is, are we trying to make all of the parks AODA requirement, or are we doing that when we build new parks? And I can see that certainly when we're building new parks, but yeah, I'm just thinking in terms of the budget being must-dos versus would like to do. This one, I'm not 100% convinced that it's a must-do. And I'm just wondering if maybe we can get some more information similar to what Councillor Noyes has asked on the one before.
Well, I think on the parks, there was going to be a reoccurring ask, just like what you two just did. Mr. Hurlovich will take notes on this, and we'll assess those things for
Okay.
sure.
And that works for me, and by no means do I not appreciate the investment, but given the last couple of slides we looked at in Jonathan's presentation, this budget is going to be a tough one, and we are going to need to look for some savings in certain aspects, and to me, this might be one of them.
Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I have similar concerns that were raised by Councillor Noyes for AC Douglas, as well as Councillor Lewis for Waterfront Park. I'm actually very familiar with this park. It's probably one of my children's favorite parks in town. It's a great location. And it's actually in relatively good condition, at least when I was there. The last time. It's been a little while, but I'm quite familiar with it. I do recall that we had done some upgrades recently to that park. I believe it now has an accessible swing and a toddler swing that allows a parent and a toddler to sit on the swing together. So we've definitely been doing some upgrades to that park. I'm also concerned about service level and the challenges that we're facing with DCs and reserve funding. I would certainly, I understand you have a capital replacement program, you want to get these assets replaced under that program. I'm certainly, I don't want to be the only one here to say no. I want more info to defer, but I certainly hope as we approve these things that we do look at our service level in our future budget presentations, as Mr. Jansen laid out, and perhaps look at these strategically. Maybe, as Councillor Noyes said, don't replace the entire park, find opportunities to replace what can be replaced, what can be worked on. I mean, there's already a ramp there. It's not an ideal ramp. Is it serviceable? Can we keep it in service? These are going to be the tough challenges that we on council and that we're going to have to ask. So I share similar concerns, and I hope staff is able to provide that information, because it's definitely something I'd like to see as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So we'll move on to the dog park in Northport Erie. So I take it that's Stevensville. Councillor Noyes.
Yes, I think there's two recommendations here, Stevensville and Douglastown, Black Creek. I will say that I've heard from, and I kind of smile when I say this, I brought this up 20-something years ago about Stevensville needing a dog park. I'm sure Douglastown and Black Creek would also like one. They've never really requested one, but I'm sure if the one was there, they'd want one. I've never heard it from the residents, but, and I'm not sure whether this plan is talking about one park or two parks.
Well, Councillor Noyes, in most places, there's one park. So there's one dog park in Fort Erie, one in Bridgeway. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm looking at the pictures here.
I know what it said, but at the end of the day, it's going to end up one dog park. You can't make a dog park for small dogs and a dog park for big dogs.
No, that's
They're going to
not,
be for all dogs.
Councilor McDermott, that's not the point I was making.
Okay.
I'm not sure whether they're thinking of putting a park, one in Stevensville and one in Black Creek, Douglastown.
Oh, yeah, okay. So,
Because
Mr. Walsh, you
I see two pictures.
want to tackle that one?
Well, Mr. Chair, I think it's actually under planning. So the pictures that are on your screen now are actually showing that there's two parks. So there would be two half-acre dog parks, one in Douglastown and one in Stevensville. Excuse me. So the $100,000 budget is $50,000 for each of those parks. That's largely based on the cost of fencing and then the signs and some other amenities, but the fencing is the significant cost in terms of bringing those forward.
And
Okay. Any questions?
I
Okay, carry on.
I appreciate that, and that's kind of what I got, was that there was two different parks in the two different communities, like, one park in each area. And I'm sure that the location has not yet been decided. I think these are just suggestions, but it's not nailed down, and at this point, there's been no community outreach or anything else like that. I think it's just saying, okay, it could go here and it could go there. I don't want to be married to this, basically, that this is where they're going to go until we have some community input. But we're just approving the budget today. We're not approving the location. I see everybody shaking their head. Thank you.
Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm actually a little surprised that we'd be proposing two parks. I understand one park in Stevensville. That makes sense. And it's just, I hope we can take a look at our parks and master plan and have a look at where needs are across the entire community. The only reason I say this is we have a park in the Sugar Bowl, and we've got parks in Ridgeway. We've got an entire swath going from Bridgeburg all the way across to Ridgeway. We've got Crescent Park, Buffalo Heights, Spears High Point is a very growth-intensive area in the municipality. It's going to have lots of new parks going in as that area continues to grow. I certainly hope we can look at this because I don't want to step on anyone's toes or rain on anyone's parades, but the idea of having two dog parks in two separate parts of one community in Fort Erie when we have an entire 15-kilometer stretch along Garrison Road that has nothing at all, with a lot of residents who have lived there for years, that's concerning for me. I'm fine approving the budget, but I am going to be very concerned if we put two brand-new parks very relatively close to each other when, Crescent Park, the number of dogs that I see running around in Ferndale Park, which is not an off-leash dog park, it's very well utilized. I hope we can take a look at a master plan to determine where the need is, rather than just saying, we need them in Fort Erie North, we're going to build two there. I think we have to have a more comprehensive look at this. That's my thought. I'm fine budgeting it, but the locations, I think we need some clarification on that. And those are just my comments, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Lewis?
Thank you, and I don't go to dog parks. I have a very bad dog. And I don't know if that's a pecuniary interest or not, but would have saved the debate. Just one question. The $100,000 for the two potential dog parks in the north end of Fort Erie, because we've gone through the process of designing a number of dog parks, is there any cost savings with reusing those parameters design and just inserting into a new location? And the other part of the question is, in terms of fencing, from what I gather, you need the area in that closes off, and there's two gates, and that certainly needs to be chain link. But has there been any discussion at the staff level of looking into some of the, what I'm going to call agricultural fencing, or some of the perimeter fencing, in terms of trying to get the costs down and still achieve having the dog park in the north end?
Mr. Hurlovich?
Yes, through you to the councillor. So we did look at the cost of chain link fencing, because that's typically what's being used. As for design, basically it's enclosed the area that's available, so it's not like that's a big design element that needs to be done. Basically, the fence company would enclose the area that's identified by staff. Certainly get the point raised by the other councillors who question whether or not these are the appropriate locations, and certainly even if they were already established as the locations, community consultation would have to take place.
And then just further to the agricultural fencing for the perimeter versus the chain link fencing, is that something that staff has explored or would be exploring to see as a cost-saving alternative?
To you again, to the councillor, I apologize that I didn't address that. So we had not done that, but we could investigate that.
And those are my only comments on that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Christensen?
I want to talk about the underlying discussion that's been going on with respect to, on a number of occasions, we've raised the issue of the necessity of the parks master plan. In going through each of the requests, that was something, one of the pillars of our strategic plan relates to quality of life. One component is social and recreational issues, so anything related to parks and facilities, including dog parks, to me is something that the plan is a high priority. We are going to have to make difficult decisions. There is no question in my mind that there's both in some cases, uneven distribution of facilities and across the town in various places, and I'm not there are obviously different operators of facilities in town. And so I think that is really critical that we look at the Parks and Recreation Master Plan as an absolute priority. So that's one thing. And then with respect, just for information as a dog park user and someone who's been involved for many years, the issue with chain link fence is that it is probably a higher strength for small and large dogs smashing into the fences. And so the durability is a major issue. So just wanted to add that one. And safety of the little creatures.
Your worship?
So Chair, I'm not exactly sure why we would budget for 2 parks. I think we should budget for 1 park. Going forward, we can, and we can determine, the residents can determine where the best location is. But as Councillor Dubanow has said, we have a lot of areas here. We have a lot of large parks that don't have a dog park. Not sure where the suggestion came from, but I'd like to move that we budget for 1 park. This will have no impact on the operating budget because the funding would come from development charges, but still, in terms of spreading these out in some type of equitable fashion for accessibility, what have you, that's my motion, 1 park, for now.
Motion. Second. Any more comments? Councillor Noyes?
And I don't necessarily disagree, because again, I did not hear the request for a dog park in Black Creek, and I don't know when you were knocking on doors whether that was a concern raised when you were doing it. And I will say in Stevensville, that was a big concern and has been for 20 years. So I don't necessarily disagree, but I wonder if it would be better to defer the second park until, it did take me 20 years to get one in Stevensville. So, or hopefully in Stevensville. So I wonder if we could defer it, the second park, till next year, as opposed to removing it completely.
Well, Chair, I think, yeah, I mean, my thinking in line with Councillor Christensen is that we need the master plan. The master plan may identify where these are going to go. Douglastown is slated for a fair bit of growth. And so it may very well be that when there's, when that new subdivision, Spring Creek Estates is built, there may very well be a need, and the park there may be the location. But so I don't think I want to anticipate that in advance. I think we should get the master plan and then see what recommendations might come out of that.
So before we vote on that, just one question back here with regards to how imminent is the open space and parks plan?
Yes, so to you, Mr. Chair, the town has the consultants on hire. They completed the background work. That would require that be updated because that background work was done pre-COVID. So already that's 4 years old. So we'd want to have that updated, and then we could move forward. We need to basically allocate staff to that. We're still facing staff shortages, but we can move this into the realm of our parks planner, who is now currently on staff. Would be a 2023 project then, or sorry, 2024 project.
Thank you.
And I don't mean to be confrontational or anything, but this background, it was pre-COVID, all right. It was pre-COVID back to, I think, 2008. It didn't, there has been, I checked last year when I saw the tennis courts was on there. And I said, okay, where did it show up? When I was looking for the Parks and Open Space Master Plan a little over a year ago, and I couldn't find one more than 2006. I could see that there was 2 public meetings, but I think the public meetings happened in 2007, September or whatever. Like, I mean, we're not talking 4 years, we're talking a lot more than that. And again, we can't change history and we need to move forward, but it really does need to be a priority. But we're not talking 4 years that the background study was done. The background study was done, what's 8? approximately, but how much would it be? My math in my head is terrible when I, when I don't have a calculator. It was considerably more than 10 years ago.
We've had an answer that we have it wrapped up in 2024. So in the
And I'm-
meantime, that doesn't, I suppose it really doesn't, I mean, let's think about it a second. If we're talking about Stevensville, there's quite, you know, all the spaces where a dog park would be a possibility. So, you know, I think we're right in waiting for this report. But in the meantime, I mean, there's options that you know about, and probably many of the residents know about, that they might want to let us know where they want it. Go ahead.
In no way am I suggesting that we don't put the dog park in 2024, that we wait for the, just want to
No, there's gonna be
really,
one- There'll be one in
I really
2024.
want to be clear for that. I don't want to wait for the Parks and Open Space Master Plan. I just wanted to make sure, it's very important we get that one done, but
I think we know what you want, that's for sure.
So let's call the vote.
Yeah. Call the question. All in favor? Carry. Okay, so now let's move on to the Douglastown footpath replacement. Comments or questions? Councillor Noyes.
more of a comment, I'm very happy to see this on here. This is a very, very well-used trail, or I guess it's a lane. It's used constantly throughout the year, and I'm very happy to see that it's going to be upgraded, because as you can see from the picture, it does need it. But it's used, 12 months out of the year, and it's very well used, so I'm glad to see it on here. Thank you.
Anybody else? All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry. Had that vote before that, you confused me, Your Worship. Not nice.
It's your fault now.
It's my job.
It's your fault.
Welcome home. The Erie Beach Subdivision Park. Your Worship?
I support this, and I notice that we've got the boundary of where this park will be, and I just want to, I don't think I can let this go. There may have been some intrusion into this park recently, and that is very, very unfortunate. And I hope that the authorities, whether it's the town, the region, the Conservation Authority, weigh in on that, because it's completely contrary to what we're hoping to accomplish here, and it's really unfortunate. But I support moving forward with this for sure.
Anybody else? Moving right along. The Fort Erie Tennis Club courts, 104 and 7 replacement. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you. Again, this is going to be a difficult budget year, this and next. Last year, we were approached that one of the courts, I don't know which one, court 7, let's say, was going to be changed into a pickleball court. That's not happening anymore, I understand. So now, last year, they could live without one of the courts. It could become a pickleball court, and they could have one less tennis court. And again, now they're asking for $600,000 in 2024. Again, this is without a Parks and Open Space Master Plan, it's really hard to approve $600,000 for a private club. And this is what it is. I know there are some public use of it now, but again, I would rather see that they do perhaps 2 courts a year, because then in 2000 and, what year is it? They're asking for let's see if I can find it, in 2026, they want another $250,000. So in 3 years, from 24 to 26, they're asking for $850,000 for tennis courts. I can't see that as being a priority. I'm not saying you don't slowly do it, maybe 2 courts a year until they're done, but to say we're going to do, I think there's 5 courts this year being done, and then another something done in 2026, more courts done then. And I added the different numbers, and I don't want to be parochial, but in Ward 6, in those 3 years, the same 3 years, we're spending $810,000 for all the parks, the footpath, everything. We're spending $810,000 in that same time period, but yet for the tennis club, we're going to spend $850,000. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's a priority. I think we heard today that where we spend our money tells us what matters to us and what we value the most. I'm all for the tennis courts getting improvements, but I'm not for spending $850,000 in 3 years.
Anyone else? Your worship?
Yeah, so I take a slightly different view of this. This is, in my view, the tennis courts are municipal property. They're owned by the municipal corporation. They're no different than the E.J. Freeland Community Center, which we own. They're no different than the Crystal Ridge Center, which we own. We lease it to the Lions in Ridgeway. We lease this to the Boys and Girls Club. We've got the Conley Park facility in Thunder Bay, which we lease to the Kinsman Club. But we do the capital improvements, and we've spent a lot of money on E.J. Freeland. We spent a lot of money on Crystal Ridge. We spent a lot of money, some money at Conley. These are the premier tennis courts in Fort Erie. These are courts that are utilized by all of the programs for all of the players, including the youth. We've had a number of meetings with the Fort Erie Tennis Club. The CAO, Sean Hutton, have been involved. They've agreed to expand their opportunities for the public to utilize these facilities, which they should. Those who belong to the club pay a membership, just like those who use the facilities here at E.J. Freeland or at Crystal Ridge. So we own the facilities. We could say we'll just let them deteriorate, because they are in a condition where they're not really up to the level of play that they currently have been attracting. And there's a large youth program for kids in Fort Erie that play here. You could do 2 courts a year, but I believe that there is some benefit in getting in, doing the work all at once, so the 4 courts which are adjacent to each other, they can be constructed, and that's done, then it's over with. The CAO may have some further comments on this because he's been engaged in the meetings. I don't want to put him on the spot. He may not, but I'm going to support this because these are municipal facilities, and the agreement with the Fort Erie Tennis Club is changing, has changed, will be more open to use by the public. But they actually provide a benefit to us as well because they put some money in here and they're managing the facilities for us.
Before I go to the CAO, I'll go to Councillor Lewis.
Yeah, and I agree with, well, actually some of the comments that were made by Councillor Noyes and certainly some that were made by the mayor. One of the questions that came up when looking at this the other night was, another example of a town-owned facility would be the Birdie Boating Club, which is municipally owned property that is leased by the club, and then the club takes care of the assets. But would there be opportunities in the future where, for instance, the Birdie Boat Club comes to the town of Fort Erie and says, we need help with dredging, or we've had damage to our docks? They do provide a service. They're one of the few boating clubs in the municipality that run fishing derbies and certainly bring an economic benefit to the town. But what's the difference between the two in terms of municipally owned property and where we extend ourselves into paying for infrastructure at one and potentially not at another? Pardon me?
Thank you. Through the chair, I will make an effort at this. The initial inquiry was regarding the tennis club, so I'll speak to that one first. But the mayor is quite correct. We've just entered into a 10-year lease agreement with the tennis club at the request of council, or significantly guided by council, was the concern about exclusivity of that club. And we did negotiate different terms in the lease agreement with the tennis club to allow for a greater amount of public access. And we've also agreed as a town that we would work with the tennis club to actually promote public hours at the site to encourage more people to use it as sort of single-use, non-member, but single-use at the facility. So the mayor's correct. The premise of spending money at the facility is that it is a town-owned facility. And so I think that was the rationale for making that investment, and certainly is in the town's interest to continue to promote public use of that site, particularly with these types of investments. So we would certainly commit to doing that, and that's certainly what the 10-year lease agreement contemplates, is a much greater public access or public use of that facility. In terms of the Birdie Boat Club, I don't have a lot of background on that particular site, so I'd have to look into that and maybe get back to Councillor Lewis for greater clarity on ownership and some of the investments that might be contemplated at that site, if that's okay.
Thank you for the clarity on that, and yes, some background on that would be helpful, because I can see the similarities between the two in some regards, and maybe some aspects where they are vastly different, but it was a question that came into mind.
Councillor Noyes.
It may help if we knew exactly what the expanded public terms are. I don't know what they are. I know that there's something that was mentioned. I don't know if it's like Saturday afternoons or every Tuesday night or it's 6 o'clock in the morning. I don't know. So what are the expanded public hours? That may sway me.
Mr. C.A.L.?
Through the chair, I don't have specific details on what those hours would be. I know the tennis club does look at their scheduling for the year for different leagues and other things and tournaments that are there. So I don't have the specific details. I can certainly follow back with Mr. Hutton and get some greater detail about the additional hours that may be available to the public for use, or specific days and times that it would be made available for public use, and provide that to council.
Councillor Christensen, and then his worship, and then
I think I still have the floor.
Yes.
Still has the floor.
oh, I'm sorry.
Having heard that, and I can understand, I can understand that it's evolving. But in this 10-year lease agreement, was there a number, like an extra 10 hours a week, an extra 20 hours a week, 1 hour a week, 55 minutes? Like, was there any meeting of the minds what it could be?
Who are you directing that to?
Well, the CAO.
Mr. C.A.L.?
Through the chair, I guess that's the information I'll look to clarify for council and get back to you.
Okay. Councillor Christensen?
I guess further to Councillor Noyes' concerns, I would be interested in finding out, yes, the number of hours, the actual times, because it's wonderful to have kiddie hours, but if they're at midnight, that's not very, that's not very accessible to children, assuming they have a lighting system that allows them to have hours at midnight. So I would want to know the nature of the programming, the time of the programming for public access, because I'm thinking that some of the public access will relate to income issues and the capacity to belong to a private club. So that's sort of one piece. The other is, was there a mention, Mr. McQueen, of communications, with aggressive communications with respect to the changed mandate? And it would have to be consistent, persistent, and it would be, the town website, but social media, a lot of things, possibly other places, other locations. in order to ensure that the new potential participants would know that they now are not excluded.
Councillor Dubanow, and then His Worship.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm going to support this, and I think the mayor raised a very excellent point. This is a municipal asset, and we lease it to an organization, and irrespective of the lease, there may be a different leaseholder at some point in the future, and the prospect of not as a lease holder, or rather as a property holder that leases property. The idea of letting something fall into disrepair or not maintaining it properly due to however you perceive a tenant, that's not appropriate, because you could always have a different lease in the future, and the last thing you want is to have a facility in disrepair that you can't lease to another organization or even use as your own municipal asset. So regardless of our lease agreements, regardless of whatever agreements, if they're municipal assets, we have to maintain them. And if we're not willing to maintain them due to whatever arrangements, then we need to divest ourselves of them. So as long as we're holding this right now, my opinion, and I understand members of council may disagree, and that's fine, but we have an obligation to ensure that this is in good repair. And if the concern is that we don't want to maintain facilities that are perceived as exclusive or don't have the public access you would expect municipal funding to have a return on, then we have to have a discussion about divestiture, is my opinion. So right now, we own this. It is a municipal asset. We have an obligation to ensure that it's repaired and maintained. And I want to thank the CIO and members of town staff for actually engaging with the tennis club and addressing those concerns. Hopefully that's addressed in the lease. But regardless of that, if we own it, we have to maintain it. Same way we repair the roof at the E.J. Freeland Center. You have to pay to use the pool and whatever else, but we own the building, we got to repair the roof, we got to repair the exterior. That's what happens when you own property. Anyone who owns a rental home in town knows, just because you're not happy with your tenants or don't like something your tenants do doesn't mean you can't repair the roof or don't want to repair the roof. That's a dangerous road to go down. So I'm going to be supporting this, and I hope that if this is something we don't want to do, then we have to have a discussion about divestiture. And that's just my opinion. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Councillor, Your Worship.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've been feverishly looking to try to find where the discussion with the tennis club shows up someplace on our agenda. So it would have come through the Land Committee, number one, but I can't believe that, and the CEO can correct me on this, I can't believe that we would enter into an agreement for the use of a municipal facility that we don't have to approve. So if it hasn't come before us in a report or bylaw, then it's still not an agreement.
Before I go to Councillor Noyes, I'll go to the CAO on the comment of the mayor.
Thank you, through the chair. The issue did come through the Land Committee. I'll have to check through the clerks and get back to council on exactly how that transaction happens in terms of contractual arrangements, and provide that information back. In terms of, just to the earlier question from Councillor Christensen regarding the information, the tennis club has been very much encouraged by the town's want to get greater public access, because it's actually a feeder for them, because people who go and use it as public access often have a good time, enjoy the facility, and then consider membership on a go-forward basis. So we've had a good discussion with them, from my understanding with Mr. Hutton, that they're actually as encouraged by greater public access and use as we would be interested in the town. So, but again, we'll certainly get that information back, and I think we do need to clarify the question that the mayor brought forward, because we did get approval through Land Committee that would have come through the minutes to here, I believe, in the last round of council, or maybe the one before. So we'll get clarification on that, and be sure to get back to you.
Councillor Noyes.
Thank you. And again, this is evolving. I will say that I can remember that it did come to us about 3 months ago, if I'm not mistaken. I think we looked up, the membership was around 250, if I'm not mistaken, and they were going to now start charging more for out-of-town residents. I remember the information and all that. But at no point do I recall an ask for $600,000. At no point. I remember last year we talked about $100,000 to change Court 7 into a pickleball court. Now suddenly, Court 7, and respecting Councillor Dubanow's comment, Court 7 has been like that for a bit. So it's not, yeah, and they were fined last year to change that into a pickleball court, which I understand is going to move someplace else now. So now suddenly, we need to make Court 7 back into a tennis court. And like I said, and I'm looking at courts 1 to 4, or at least I'm looking at that one. It doesn't look like it's in horrible shape. And I don't want anything to put anybody at risk. I mean, that's not my point. But at the same point, earlier we talked about dog parks and the need for, there's other areas of town that may need a dog park. Now, tennis courts, I'm not sure about all the wards, but I know there's a tennis court in Black Creek, there's a tennis court in Stevensville, there's a tennis court at Ferndale Park, there's a tennis court in Ridgeway, there's a tennis, yeah, there is, behind the arena. Isn't it both?
But there
Oh,
was
okay.
over on,
I thought it was multi. Okay, so we do have tennis courts. So we do have public using them. They're asphalt, they're not the state of the art, things like that. So again, when this came before us in Land Committee, at no point did I hear a $600,000 ask. I have no doubt that the tennis club is very enthused and encouraged by the town wanting to go into a 10-year lease. And they're even more encouraged now that we're looking at giving them $600,000 this year and then another $250,000 in 2 more years. Again, where we're spending, if we spend the money here, we can't spend it someplace else. And I know there's needs in my ward that don't include this tennis court. And I'm not saying don't do it, I'm just saying slow it down a little bit, maybe $200,000 a year, or maybe 250, because I think if I do my math correctly, unless Court 7 is taking more than $125,000, if you do the division, it's about $125,000 a court to upgrade it. We're supposed to be showing fiscal restraint, and if I would rather, and I guess I will make a motion, that we do 2 courts a year at an upset limit of $250,000. They can choose whether they want Court 7 done or not. But again, last year they didn't need it. So that's the other issue I have. So at this point, if there's no other discussion, I'm going to ask. Oh, okay, so I hear there's more comments.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I understand where Councillor Noyes is coming from, because this is a very difficult time when it comes to our budget and the financial realities we chase, or that we're facing. But this is not giving the tennis club this money. It is a municipal asset. It is an investment into a municipal asset that the municipality owns. If the tennis club wasn't there, it would be our asset, and we would be operating it the same as a tennis court at any other park. So we're not giving it to the tennis club. It is very important to make that distinction. This is a municipal asset, and it is an investment into our own municipal infrastructure, who we lease to the tennis club. As the mayor mentioned earlier, same as E.J. Freeland, same as the building in, I call it the Thunder Bay Park, but I think everyone knows the Kinsmen rent the building at the park there. So I want to make that distinction. So before we move a deferral here, I'd like to hear from town staff who actually have to manage our asset management plan and actually have to determine where we fund and how these fundings go through strategically based on availability, what they think about doing this over 3 years, especially considering that we're facing continual increase in costs as each year goes on. I'd like to hear from them before, and I'm totally fine with Councillor Noyes bringing that forward. I would want to hear from staff first on their opinion on that.
Before I go to staff, because I see hands up again. I'll go to your worship, and then we'll take the question from staff.
Yeah, so and staff can confirm this, but my understanding is if you go in and you do this type of project on 2 or 3 occasions, each time you go in, you have to start from scratch, number one. Number two, you run the risk of damaging the work you've already done because it's adjacent to what you're trying to do, because these 4 courts, 1 to 4, are all adjacent to each other. They have fencing. The fencing is going to be removed in order to resurface all of them. So there is, as I understand it, some benefit in doing all of this work at once as opposed to piecemealing it. But staff can comment on that.
Councillor Lewis, that figure's going up and down, up and down.
Didn't ever
I'll let you hop
have
in
one
now
now.
while you got the opportunity.
And further to the mayor's question, I guess my question is, just not knowing the full operation of the tennis club, is it the town that's responsible for the infrastructure investments to keep it in the condition it is? Or is it partially the town, partially the tennis club? And the reason I ask is I go back to the Birdie Boat Club example of my understanding their setup is full cost by the club on a town-owned municipal asset. And I'm interested in where this is going because there's a major asset there that is not paid for at all by the municipality. But anyway, that's my question on that one.
Mr. Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The mayor hit the nail on the head with this. 2 of the courts right now are in distress and are in need of repairs. In the spring, Mr. Hutton tried to get a tennis court repair firm down here. They wouldn't come down. He couldn't get anybody to come down. So the club ended up making half-bummed repairs to the courts to get them into a condition that was suitable for their tournaments. As the mayor said, there is economies of scale by doing all 4 courts at once instead of 2 courts at once, or 2 plus 1 court this year and 2 courts next year. Further, the larger project is the more chance you have of competitive bidding on the project. So those are the benefits of doing all the courts at once.
Okay. Councillor Noyes.
And I can appreciate that those explanations. You can always find a reason to do something. You can always find a reason not to do something. But when I'm looking at over $500,000, that this is our priority, I can't see it. And I would, again, remiss that Court 7 wasn't going to be done at all last year. It was going to be a pickleball court. So I don't even know, without all the information, why now suddenly it has to be done and made into a tennis court. I wouldn't mind getting an answer from someone who knows the answer to that, but I don't think they're here. So I will kind of acquiesce a little bit because Court 7 does not connect with the other courts from what I can see. I'm not terribly familiar with it, so if hearing the mayor and Mr. Walsh's explanation that if you do, I don't see these things really connecting, but I'm going to say that they are, that 1 to 4 is connecting, that I would say let's do 1 to 4, let's not do Court 7. They didn't need it last year. Find out if we even need Court 7. I'm rethinking my own thoughts here. Again, I think it's just way too much money to put into a private club, and without the information of how it's going to be public.
Just want to go to Mr. Walsh on your comment here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Noyes, the mayor, myself, Sean Hutton, I can't remember if Mr. McQueen was in the meeting or not, met with members of the tennis club regarding the lease in November. There were 2 members in that room that are also part of Fort Erie Pickleball. And we had a discussion on Court 7 and its conversion into a pickleball. Everybody in the room agreed that we would leave it as a tennis club or a tennis court, leave Fort Erie as Fort Erie's, the municipality of Fort Erie's tennis center, and Ridgeway, the Crystal Ridge Center, would be Fort Erie's, the municipality of Fort Erie's pickleball center. So that's the impetus for not converting Court 7 into a pickleball court.
Councillor Noyes?
No, I appreciate that. I think Mr. Walsh and I talked about that earlier today, and I knew the pickleball court was going to be someplace else. It wasn't going to be here anymore. But again, I guess, and I'm not going to belabor this, or maybe I am, I'm not sure anymore. I still think it's a heck of a lot of money. And again, I'm comparing all the money that we're going to be spending for the next 3 years in Ward 6 is, what, 810,000, and that's for the Yacht Road Playground, that's for the dog park. Oh, actually, you can take $50,000 off of that now. The A.C. Douglas Playground, the Loyalist Nature Trail, the Diamond repair at Yacht Road, and the footpath in Douglastown. So all those things are coming to $810,000. That, I see, is where I would like to go, and I'm thinking I have councils will probably support it all, the staff support it, but I don't see spending $850,000 in 3 years on the tennis courts. I don't see that as a priority. I am going to go back to my original motion that we put, okay, they want 600,000. We put $250,000 towards this project. And so that's going to be my amendment or my motion for the next 3 years.
Is there a seconder to that?
Don't need one.
Oh, I'm sorry, don't need one. So, all in favor of Councillor Noyes' motion? Opposed?
Okay, I would like a registered vote.
Recorded vote?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
Councillor Noyes.
Yes.
Councillor Dubanow.
No.
Councillor Flagg.
No.
Mayor Redekop.
No.
Councillor Lewis.
No?
Councillor Christensen.
No.
And Councillor McDermott.
No.
That is not carried.
Not that I want to talk about tennis courts anymore, Mr. Chair. I believe we used to have a ball hockey court at the Albert Street Park, which was replaced. And I'm indifferent to whether we keep it as a ball hockey court or a tennis or pickleball. I'm just wondering, do we have any other ball hockey courts of this nature remaining in Fort Erie? Is it the intent of the municipality to change these all to tennis courts? And I'm just wondering if any public consultation or anything has been done, even like an internal town study to determine whether it's utilized. I would hate to take this away if it's the only one of this type left in the town and there is actually a desire to use it. And that's perhaps just information that I don't have that perhaps staff can fill me in on.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I do not have that information.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, I'm going to support this one way or another. If the court does need to be replaced, I'm just wondering if perhaps before we actually put it out to tender and spend that, maybe we could just flesh a little bit of that information out, maybe even seek some public input. I'm, not to belabor something that's going into Energy Field, right in Ward 2, but I just want to ensure that if we're going to switch the use, that the public is aware and that we're not taking something away that's, perhaps the last one or perhaps a magnet or a draw to the area. That's my only concern, Mr. Chair.
Will the design of this park being a multi-use facility create the possibility of animosity between users? So people wanting to play pickleball and then others wanting to play basketball. And I'm just trying to envision how this multi-use court will be set up, whether that will be a possibility or whether both can be used at the same time.
Mr. Walsh?
I don't, through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think we've given it that much consideration as to who's on there first or whatever. Can't we all just get along?
Thank you. Councillor Noyes?
I don't know if this helps, Councillor Flagg, is that we do have this multi-use in Douglastown. I don't know if we have is Stevensville also pickleball too? I'm not sure. I know it's a multi-use for basketball and tennis, but I know they do play pickleball at AC Douglas, and it's a community, they all get along, they wait their turn or whatever. It's, they kind of know. So it doesn't seem to be a problem. And they also have the basketball, pickleball, and tennis in the same thing. It all seems to work out pretty well.
Anybody else on this? Just want to point out that there's, in this town where we have schools that have basketball teams, there's always kids on the basketball team, when they try out, they don't make it. And a lot of the time is because, a lot of the problem is we don't have very many basketball courts in our community. So I kind of look at something like this. We had some sort of hockey thing out by the Optimist Hall, but that really never got off the ground. But I think it might over Energy Field. Energy's a nice little park. So, even if it didn't have pickleball, if it was, ball hockey and basketball, I think that would be a good thing. So, did you have a comment there, Councillor Christensen?
All of this discussion that we've had in the last half hour relates to the fact that we need a good, solid master plan. Everything here. That's what it's about. What are the Fort Erie designated facilities for tennis, pickleball, possibly ball hockey? How are they distributed? So that's just every bit of discussion we've had in the last half hour to 3/4 of an hour points that out to me, so.
Yeah, you don't have to convince me.
Yeah, I know, I'm just a little dog with a bone at the moment. Oh, God, that's dog park comment, sorry.
Let's not talk dog parks then. So, okay, so we'll move on? Yeah, okay. Move on to next. Okay, Oaks Park renovations. Any comments? Seeing none, move along. Ridgeway Shores Park Development. We all good? Okay. Waverly Beach Park Healing Garden. Councillor Dubanow.
This is just a quick comment, and it just goes back to the earlier mention the mayor had mentioned about that whole Waverly Beach area and how that's going to be a real gem in our community once we get it developed and built out. I'm thrilled that something like this is going in here. The mayor and I have had discussions and kind of looked through the area and kind of, envisioned what it could look like. I'm really excited that this land is coming into public hands and that we're going to be able to protect it, promote it, and do things like this for our community. And I don't want to belabor and talk more, but I'm really excited about how this whole area is going to turn out. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anybody? Councillor Noyes?
Yes, and I don't have the criteria for it, but I know that recently the provincial or federal government, one of those levels, really has indicated there's some grant funding for Indigenous projects. And I'm just wondering if this could possibly be one of them. I don't know the criteria, but that came out, I think I read that last week, that some money was being made available to Indigenous projects. So not knowing the criteria, I'm just thinking it may be something we want to look into.
I take it we'll be looking into that.
We will now.
Thank you. Anybody else? Moving on. So, now we're working on fire department stuff. Auto extrication tools. Anybody? We'll keep moving. Bunker gear replacement. Councillor Noyes?
I'm all for this, and I ask this question every time it comes up. For the equipment that we're replacing, I think that gets sent someplace else, to another community or area. I'm just wanting to see if that's still the case.
Chief?
Yeah, through the chair to the Councillor Noyes, that's correct. Bunker gear is donated to communities in need, and the auto extrication is also going to be sold.
And thank you for that.
So for the tactical radio channel? Anyone? Okay, moving on. Volunteer firefighters pagers? Moving on. Recruit PPE? Councillor Flagg?
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Are we to assume, based on this, that we're looking at recruiting 20 new firefighters over the next couple of years? Is that the rationale for 40 grand here?
Chief?
Through the chair, the number of staff sometimes fluctuates. Truthfully, it's equipment costs that come along. In the past couple of years, we've been very fortunate that we had downsizing in the department. We were able to use previous gear, so we're going to see an increase in purchasing of new gear in the coming years.
Anybody else? Now we're moving on. The rescue replacement? Comments or questions? Moving on. Rescue 2 replacement, 2004 Ford. Rescue unit. Anybody? No? Okay. The Ridge Road North, the Park Street, or Elm Street, water main. Your worship?
I support this. I'm just wondering whether we've got on our horizon, and I didn't go through the Capital Works program, the section of Elm Street between Ridge Road and Prospect Point Road. That's the one that has the telephone poles basically in the road.
Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they're at the side of the road. But
It's a very narrow road.
I can't remember if it's in our current 10-year program. My apologies. I know it was in our former 10-year program. I can't remember if it's been pushed out or not.
Okay, I'll just have to look it up. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Christensen?
And will this cover the part between Prospect Point and Ridge Road where the pavement, the sidewalk, is significantly higher than the road, like, so that if you're using a walker or anything, it's...
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is on the west side of Ridge, not the east.
Anything further? Then we'll move on. Guam Road and water main replacement. Councilor Lewis.
Just one brief comment. I hope we're going to proactively communicate this out to residents when this does go to construction. That is a very busy commuter-heavy area, and I'm not quite sure what our recommended detour would be. Certainly supportive of it, but just want to take that as, I think the sooner we communicate the plan to the public, the better.
So noted.
Noted.
On to the next one. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Noyes. Go ahead.
I'm just looking at this, the construction is not going to happen until 2028, right?
Correct.
Okay, just I don't want to start notifying them now.
They'll have lots of notice.
They may forget. That's all, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to the Harbor Town subdivision, K3. Reconstruction and urbanization, Dominion Road south to Edgemere Road.
Chair, just for clarification, the written text makes reference to Bassett, and it doesn't, it says Dominion Road to Edgemere Road, but the drawing, which is attached to this, shows work being done on Edgemere over towards Helena. So is that included in the project?
Mr. Chair, I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't know off the top of my head, and I don't think Jordan Frost does either. No.
Okay. So we'll get that information.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
you'll get that for you, His Worship?
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll move on to Yacht Road upgrade. Councillor Noyes.
I'm happy to see this. I do live on this road, but I understand from our integrity person, because it's the whole road, it's not just, I'm not really benefiting from it any more than the rest of the town would. I don't see in this thing anything about Ott Road, railroad tracks, and church. I know we've done a study on some renovations. Does this pull that into it at all, or that's going to be somewhere off in the future?
Mr. Chair, CN is still reviewing the, can I defer this question to Mr. Frost out in the audience as he waves his hands rapidly?
If I may, through you, Chair, CN has recently responded with comments on our design package, and they are with our design consultant to review and incorporate into, I believe, what's at the 60% design stage. The project at the tracks is a separate project, separate from this with a different driver, but we are starting to advance that after we've had comments from CN Rail.
Okay, so whatever improvements we do on the north side of the railroad tracks on Ott Road isn't going to interfere with what we're going to do on the south side?
The project at the tracks is improvements to the approaches getting up to cross over the tracks. It's not changing the cross-section of the roadway and the nature of how traffic will flow. So they are independent of the type of work being undertaken.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Then we'll move on to the next one, which is the Ott Road water main replacement. Anyone? Sims Avenue upgrade. Councillor Noyes.
Yes, I'm just wondering, okay, and this came up, and I can remember there's that large, what we hope for non-for-profit apartment building that's going off of it. I think that's one of the reasons for the upgrade. And again, we say developers should pay for development upgrades and things like that. I'm not seeing a lot of that here in the funding, but maybe it's coming. But why are we doing all of Sims Avenue? Like, when you look at Sims Avenue now, where the exit to be from the development is not all the way to the end of Sims. It's kind of like in the middle, and right now you have a left-hand or right-hand turning lane. Is there a left-hand turning lane on Sims too? And it only goes back a certain, I would say, maybe 200 yards, maybe? Okay, and my other concern is that, why are, does the whole road need to be done or not? That's all, because it's not that wide of a road. For part of it, it's not that big now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Where the driveway comes out is about 2/3 up the road, and then leaving 1/3 of the road. The road is in such a condition, you wouldn't want to leave it alone. And then frequently the residents on 10th Street and Northerly use Sims because it does have a traffic signal, so that's why we're improving the whole road. The stretch to the east of 10th is another, I don't know, 15 meters or so. and I think it does have a driveway on it, so that completes the whole road.
Thank you.
Councillor Christensen?
I remember that we had extensive discussion with respect to Sims when we were looking at the draft plan, and just clarification through you, Mr. Chair, are not the homes, some if not all of the homes on Sims Road on septic? Mr. Walsh?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, there is no sanitary sewer on Sims, so that's another reason to do the road, is to install a complete sanitary sewer.
That's what I recalled, that we had that discussion, and in fact, this is essentially a non-urban road in the midst of a heavily urbanized area. So I would support it because we are proposing to put in some extensive multi-residential housing with a developer who's committed to some lower income affordable housing units within that. So I think, to me, that's something well worth investing in.
Worship?
Yeah, just for clarification, it looks like about 64% of the total cost of this project design and construction is going to be paid for by development charges.
Councillor Noyes?
I'm just looking at the timing, if I'm not mistaken, isn't this the road that we brought, that Mayor Redekop, you brought up last week in regards to the condition of the road? Was it not Sims? So this road isn't going to be fixed till 2026?
I've asked for some temporary solutions because it is, yes, it is quite a deteriorated road. It's not really an asphalt road, it's a pothole road with some asphalt in between the potholes.
Yeah.
But I have spoken to the Director of Infrastructure Services about possible intermediary steps that might be considered between now and then.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure this was the road we were talking about that was in such poor condition, and we're not looking at
This is the
improving
road.
until 2026. Thank you.
So we're at the Southbridge Meadows subdivision, Parker Avenue, reconstruction and upgrade, Gordon Avenue to Wells Avenue. Anyone? Okay. And the Southbridge Meadows, Wells Avenue, reconstruction, upgrade, Dominion Road to Grove Avenue. Moving on. The West Main Street Storm sewer replacement. Councillor Noyes?
If you look under the need for the project, that's what we're on, right? It says, and I'm all for improving it, but what I'm not for is the design will include investigation of a crosswalk and a three-way stop at May Avenue. Why in the world would we put a three-way stop at a dead-end road?
Well, let's find out. Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there has been quite a bit of discussion at the public about a pedestrian crossing somewhere here, a controlled pedestrian crossing. So that's, I believe May is at the park.
No.
All right.
That's what I'm asking. Why isn't it at the park?
well,
Why is it at a dead-end street?
We're working on the details right now, so.
Yeah, Old Mill is a park. Airline is a dead end. It doesn't go anywhere.
Okay.
You might have, 8 houses on it. So have a three-way stop at that street. It really doesn't make any sense.
Traffic calming. Traffic calming.
Yeah. Anyway, knowing the area, like again, May Avenue.
So you may not end up with that stop.
Well, yeah, and again, it's, I put in my thing, needs to be by the park, Old Mill Road. So, anyway, thank you.
Moving on to the next. Oh, The road resurfacing program. Comments or questions on that? Moving on. Okay, the 2024 bridge and culvert replacement. Anything? Your worship.
So we're talking about the Winger Road culvert
Okay.
or bridge? Is it the bridge? Is this the culvert or is it the
and
bridge?
culvert? Both.
Bridge and culvert replacement program.
Aren't we on? So if it's the bridge, isn't it south of East Main? And is this is the one-lane bridge that we're talking about, I presume? And is that really, is that going to be a good expenditure of funds? Have we had any dialogue with the region? Sorry to be asking all these questions at once. If we had any dialogue with the region about this, because if we're talking about another point of access into Ridgeway from the QEW as opposed to going down Stevensville Road, Gorham Road, whatever, this would, I think, would be one of the potential alternatives. So I'm wondering if I know this needs to be done because of the condition, but shouldn't we be having more discussion with the region? They don't own the road, but they may be part of an alternate roadway.
Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is the bridge north of the creek, not the one-lane bridge south of the creek. So this is a two-lane replacement. Regardless of the region's plan, a three-lane or more road is not required, which is what I think you're getting at.
No, I'm getting at if it's not the bridge that goes over the creek, then perhaps that's not a problem. But I think if we were to replace that bridge, yeah, just trying to find it.
This bridge goes over Black Creek proper. The one-lane bridge goes over the south trib.
Yeah. Okay, so that's, yeah, okay. So now I see where you're talking about. Okay, that's before the intersection. That's just before the stop sign. Okay, I'm good.
Good. Then we'll move on to the next, which is more bridge, the 2025 Bridge and Culvert Replacement Program. On to the next. Bar Avenue retaining wall. Moving on. The 2024 sidewalk repair program. Your worship?
Do we spend all the money we put into the sidewalk repair program each year?
Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we do.
And one year we did put some extra money in for new sidewalks. Does this program, the sidewalk repair, result in any new sidewalks that connect existing sidewalks?
Mr. Chair, in small instances, it may, but as a rule, it's a repair program.
Okay, so then we would have to contemplate allocating additional reserve funding if we wanted to change this. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have our active transportation master plan, which council has accepted in principle. It guides our priority replacement program, our priority new program for active transportation, walking networks. There has been no new capital funding allocated for that. It's a very expensive program.
Well, we would have to allocate more capital funding. So for an example,
Correct.
if we wanted
Yeah.
to connect the sidewalk that's going to be going in at South Ridge Meadows to connect to the sidewalk that ends, I think, at Pleasant on Dominion Road, we'd have to allocate funds for that. And then we'd also have to allocate funds to take it from the little private road that goes off of Dominion into the townhouse development to connect it to Prospect, where there is a sidewalk. Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
Moving on. The Point Avenue Road Storm Pumping Station, detailed design.
Chair, can I just, it occurred to me again, if I could go back to the last item. Some of these infill sidewalks are really growth-related. So when there's a new subdivision and we're trying to connect it to existing sidewalks, I presume that would qualify? Can someone comment?
Mr. Chair, we do have a number of sidewalks identified in the proposed development charges program.
Okay, okay, thank you, sorry.
That's okay. So we're back at, yeah, the Point Avenue Road Storm Pumping Station, detailed design. Anyone on that? Okay, we'll move on. The 2024 storm sewer repairs. Moving on. Point Avenue Municipal Drain. Moving on. The Catherine SPS catchment area. Design and construction. Moving on. The Garrison Road East End sewer outlet improvements. Moving on. The 2024 wastewater trenchless repairs. Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was leaving my comments for all three of these until the end rather than for each one. I'm happy to see that these projects are moving forward. As many would know, we're facing a crunch with infrastructure in that end of town. And it's a particular concern for me and the other residents who raise these issues, because that's the area where, walkability, more medium to high density development makes sense, where you have an existing commercial corridor and services available rather than, going into the middle of a neighborhood and building up in an area that it's not used to. So I'm pleased to see this moving forward. The one section here will allow one high-density project at least move towards that situation. And the relining in particular, hopefully we're able to get some of our sewer levels kind of ironed out, and that might help some of the more medium-density, smaller projects we so desperately need to get housing in this community. So I'm in favor of this. I know sewers are never a fancy thing. It's always one of the things in the ground that we don't see until we do. And I'm glad to see these moving forward, and I think it's very important that we deal with these in a timely fashion. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Noyes.
How much of this, and actually the one that was before this too, is being paid through development charges? I don't see it worked out in here. Like this 1.1 million.
Mr. Walsh.
For you, Mr. Chair, as identified in the sheets going back to page 89, we've got a 1.45 million there. Next project, we have 350,000. And then the last project, WWTR 24, there's zero from development charges. It's all from our sanitary refurbishing reserve.
Thank you. I'm just looking at that. It says in 2024, it's going to be very reserves, so I guess that's where we're putting it in. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're at the Colony Road water main replacement. Been on? Pound Avenue water main extension. Councillor Noyes?
I'm just wondering how this development is progressing. Like, do we have any ideas of when the build-out's going to be, or are we going to tie the,
This project isn't really development related.
okay.
Are you speaking of the development in the back, which is almost built out?
Okay, yeah, I'm not that familiar with, well, I'm familiar with Pound Avenue, but I don't see a lot of building going on there. I'm just wondering if we have an idea of the,
It's almost done.
okay.
Anything else?
No, that's all.
Okay, so we're at hydro leak detection. Moving on. The water meter replacement program. The Crystal Ridge Arena exterior metal replacement. Councillor Flagg?
Thank you, Chair. And through you, I'm looking at the amount of 50 grand here, and that seems really light for this type of work, knowing what I have in my home for siding that I did. There's an awful lot of siding for 50K, so I would like the individual that budgeted this to let me know the contractor they got the pricing from, if I could. Thank you.
Could we pass that on, please? No further questions about that? Then moving on. Is the Fire Station 5 roof reshingling? On. The Gibson Center expansion? Moving on.
Chair?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Your Worship.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, as for some stats with respect to this, like how large are these additions? And I can't tell from the map whether the future expansion is connected to the current building. Doesn't look like it is.
We haven't, through you, Mr. Chair, we haven't completed or even started design yet. So we don't have the details, but the expansion to the bottom of the page is a garage expansion and doesn't necessarily need to be attached.
Why?
Well,
Why wouldn't it be logical for it to be attached?
I'm saying it doesn't need to be attached. It's vehicle storage only. There's you'd walk out there and get in the truck and it's ready to go. Whether it's attached to the existing building or not really makes no difference.
So currently, currently vehicles of that nature are inside what's called the maintenance vehicle storage area?
Correct.
Okay, so if we had more vehicles, we need more storage.
And that's what the bottom future expansion is for.
Okay, so the $2.5 million, that's a ballpark figure for what is anticipated may be required.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Moving on. The Gibson Center Vehicle Bay expansion. Moving on.
So, just
Okay.
hold on. So just hold on a
I
second.
know
Chair.
you're having a giggle over there. I didn't realize you had
No,
your hand
no, no. No, I'm just trying to, so this is the vehicle bay expansion, which is what I think is referred to in the map as the maintenance vehicle storage area, which, so this vehicle bay expansion would be attached to the maintenance vehicle storage?
Let's go back to the first question. Were you speaking of the future office addition?
No.
That's in the sketch?
I'm now on
Okay.
to Gibson Center Vehicle Bay expansion.
Okay.
And I believe the vehicle bay is the maintenance vehicle storage area as identified in the map or the
That-
drawing.
That's correct.
So that will be attached to that building.
I don't know. We haven't drawn up the plans yet.
Okay, so why would we have two separate projects for what appear to relate to the same building, some of which may or may not be attached to that building?
One was identified in previous development charges studies. The GCA 23, which is the administration expansion, was it's in our draft 2024 development charges study and part of the space study we're undertaking right now. As you know, Mr. Mayor, you've walked through that facility. We have staff climbing all over one another to complete their tasks. We have
thought that was-
we have a trailer outside with 6 staff members in it.
I thought the climbing all over was team building. Okay, thank you very much. That's more than adequate. I see Mr. Frost is up here as well. Okay. Well, that's very helpful, and I get it now. So it's one map, one plan that's showing both expansions. So that little office building, then that's going to be potentially $2.5 million.
Potentially.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Councillor Noyes.
I'm going on the same thing I think his worship was doing. $2.5 million. How much square footage are we looking at, and what is the price per square footage that we're anticipating? I know on paper it looks really small.
Mr. Chair, we're anticipating about 2,000 square feet. From our architectural information, office space is about $500 a square foot these days.
Thank you.
You need to? Okay. Next one. The Leisureplus flooring replacement. Not your flooring. Moving on to the Railroad Museum Station roof repairs. Moving on to the Point Avenue Lighthouse repairs. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, moving on. Oaks Park washroom replacement. Councillor Redekop?
Chair,
Oh,
will
sorry,
we,
wait.
will we be alerting the museum board to the fact that this building may be coming down? This has significant historical, yeah. This could have been the original building in Fort Erie. Just kidding.
I hope you are.
Yeah, but that building is, that's historically significant.
Right.
I'm
So
sure it
what was the question, though? What was the question, Your Worship?
is the museum board being alerted to the, it was a facetious question, sorry. We should be moving along.
Okay, so We're at the Oak Park washroom. I know it's not 10 o'clock yet. We shouldn't be getting yet. The Oaks Park washroom replacement. Moving on. The town hall renovations.
Yeah.
Moving on. Gibson Center HVAC replacement. The ice resurfacer replacement. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you. I had an opportunity talking to Mr. Walsh earlier today because I saw about the next 4 years. And I wonder if Mr. Walsh can explain. He did send me an email that explains it's really not just 4 years. This moves around, and it's actually, I think, a 12-year lifespan for this ice resurfer, not 4 years.
Mr. Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The last sentence in this description says the new ice resurfacer will provide service at Leisureplex for the next 4 years. We should also add, then it's moved out to the Crystal Ridge Arena for 4 years, and then it moves back to the Leisureplex to serve as the backup machine for both facilities for its final 4 years, at which time it's sold for not scrap, for reuse. And we replace our ice resurfacers on a 4-year rotation.
Okay, so we're with the Crystal Ridge Arena asphalt overlay. We'll go to the Crystal Ridge Community Center asphalt. Your worship?
Chair, my question is why is this broken down into 3 particular segments? Is it because each building has, so the library I get, but the Crystal Ridge Center, why would there be 2 contracts?
Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they'll be issued as one contract, but they're identified as 2 different assets.
So there must be some, for purposes of the asset management plan, there's a need to do that?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on. The Crystal Ridge Library asphalt replacement. Got anything? No? Okay. The Erie Road Municipal Parking Lot reconstruction. Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councilor McDermott. Just more comments and questions. I see that there's a provision for a future electrical vehicle charging station as part of it, which is, I think that's good. We're going in that direction. And having said that, are we looking at, and I know it's not this particular page, but are we looking at other electrical vehicle charging stations perhaps for the town itself? And I know we're going to go into the vehicles soon.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes, we are. There's, through you, Mr. Chair, there's a grant program out right now for municipalities to provision for those such facilities. We're looking to partner with Canadian Niagara Power on the construction of those.
Thank you for that, because I think that's where I was kind of going with this, because I think there is a grant out there. The other thing is, when this municipal park is done, we'll be looking at, will it increase, like, this is a paid parking, right? Like, people will pay to park there?
We, through you, Mr. Chair, we did put forward a parking policy back in the fall. It does provide that upon improvements of facilities that we will look into pay parking provisions.
Is this the, thank you, is this the one too that we talked about, that there'd be overnight parking or a monthly fee? Would this be one of the parking lots we were
Yes.
considering? Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, Bay Beach accessible mat replacement. Councillor Noyes, then Councillor Dubanow.
I just want to comment on how successful this beach mat has. And it's a good news, bad news story in that it's being used so much it needs to be replaced. And that's the good news. And it really does improve the access considerably, not just like for everybody, So it's a really good investment and really helps our accessibility standards. Thank you.
Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just touching on what Councillor Noyes says, I remember when we budgeted and we brought these in, and I thought it was a great idea at the time, too, for accessibility. I'm just wondering, though, perhaps staff could provide some insight. Do these typically last, 5 seasons of use, or is it just, as Councillor Noyes said, are these just so heavily utilized that we have to replace them more often than what would normally be envisioned? I'm just trying to get an idea here.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's a little of both here. I know they are heavily utilized, but just the material being out in the sun, 18 hours a day in the summer, wears on them as well.
Councillor Noyes?
I also understand that because it's on sand, it's got that gritty thing, so it starts to cut the nylon and stuff like that, so you start seeing it becoming threadbare. That's my understanding. I'm not an engineer, but that's it's where it's at too, but it's meant for that. Thank you.
Anything further? Then we'll move on to the Ridgeway Memorial Cemetery driveway expansion. Where you drive in, but you don't drive out. Councillor Flagg.
The note, I don't know what to say after that. The notation indicates that the map will identify where the roadway is going to go, and I just don't see that. Just wondering if that's going to be an addition at some point.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can provide a map to staff or to council on where it's going. Our apologies on that.
Anyone else? Okay, so now we get to the meat of the act. 2024 fleet purchase facility fan. Your worship.
So Chair, I've got, out of the list of vehicles that are being purchased, some of them are for replacement. One of them is a new vehicle, but it's required because of growth. There are 6 other vehicles that we have presented that are additional, which means, and they're all proposed to be funded from development charges, which means they're new, they're growth related. I have a number of questions relative to those. I don't take issue with the replacement vehicles or with the tandem truck that's being proposed, but I have a number of questions that relate to why we would be purchasing 6 additional in addition to our fleet. So I can run through my questions, which there are 9 of them, or I could move that we defer those 6 vehicles for a couple of weeks to give staff an opportunity to provide information such as how many vehicles do we currently have in the fleet, how many do we rent, what are the terms of the leases, what are the data, what's the data with respect to how these vehicles are used, can they be shared as an example, what are the AMP aspects of increasing our fleet, et cetera. So do you have a preference? Would you like me to go through all the questions, or would you prefer that I move to defer these to the next budget meeting so that we can get some information from staff relative to why we would need 6 new vehicles in addition to what we already have in our fleet?
Look, I can make this decision easy. Anybody going to have vehicle questions here tonight? Okay, so why don't you make a deferral on the group? Bring it back.
Okay, so I would move that we defer the approval of the 6 items, and they are by project number A16024, B06824, P15924. Sorry, is that P or R? P. R, and then R13624, R13724, and U11724 to the next budget meeting, which I believe is December the 6th, for staff to provide information and data to council regarding the current fleet, financial implications of adding new vehicles, and the justification for the purchases, and any other questions that council may wish to forward to staff.
So on that motion, before we go back to the ones that we're going to deal with, are you okay with that, Councillor Noyes?
Yeah. So council would simply forward their questions to staff.
Okay. So all in favor of the mayor's motion? Carried. So that leaves us with, what's next, Jonathan, there?
There are some vehicles for replacement.
Councillor Noyes.
Mine's an easy question. I noticed that the coloring is changing, or is that just, are we changing from blue to white, or is that just the pictures we happen to have, or? These are the
Mr. Walsh.
replacement ones.
Mr. Chair, the intention is to go to white vehicles for our small fleet.
Okay, is there a reason?
Yes, there is. Thank you. White vehicles, they're easier to obtain. The way manufacturers batch their colors is that they wait until, in this case, they get a tank full of blue pickup trucks together, and if we're buying one, they have to wait for, I don't know how many 50 other orders of blue pickup trucks before they'll make one, whereas white ones come off the line all day long. In my opinion, they look better on the road as well. They don't show the dirt as much as a dark vehicle, which improves our image out there.
Okay,
But
thank you.
the main purpose is ease of obtaining.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. I was just curious because I saw that we were changing colors, and I wonder what the rationale behind that. Thank you.
Before I go to you, Your Worship, I'm just going to ask you a question. The ones that you give us there was B06824, B15924, R13624, 13724, and U11724. That's correct? Those are the ones that are coming back?
Plus A16024. Yeah.
A16024, yes.
Anything purchased solely with development
Total of
charges
6,
funding.
right?
Yes.
Okay. So the one that we should have up right now is the fire pickup. Okay, so there we are. Anybody good? Everybody good with that one? Okay. We're not changing the Red Fire Department wants to do white, not yet, anyway.
So,
You want to talk about that?
yeah, I just wanted to talk about that because I'd like to get some information on that. And
Okay.
what I would like for staff to provide, doesn't have to be right now, is there's, to some extent, Mr. Walsh has indicated why we would consider going to white. But I'd like to know what the cost implications or savings would be. I'd like to know how we're going to integrate these new vehicles, because we're not planning on, at least the capital budget going forward doesn't contemplate purchasing any vehicles in 2025, contemplates 9 in 2026, 9 in 2027, and then I don't see anything between 2028 and 2030. So how are we going to integrate white trucks in with blue trucks? And then the final question I had is, what would the options be for branding these new vehicles, and what would the cost of same be, so that there's something distinctive about Fort Erie's vehicles? Right now, they're distinctive because they're blue, as opposed to everybody else's, which are white. So those were some questions that I can also provide to staff, just so that I've got a handle on this, because we're going to have for the foreseeable future a mixed bag of vehicles, and I don't know how that enhances our reputation.
Okay. You have all that, Mr. Walsh?
Yeah.
Okay, so where are we at here?
Mr. Chair, I thought council was going to email the questions through. I didn't write any of that down.
I'm sorry. Is that?
Want to just give them the bullet points again?
I'll send an email. I'll
Yeah,
send an
yeah,
email
yeah,
and to
that's
all
good.
members of
We all
council
know
as
what
well. Yeah.
I'm getting vertigo watching this, Jonathan. Um, Okay, so the 2024 roads dump plow sander water truck. Comments or questions? Moving on. Oh, Councillor Lewis?
I noticed one of the purposes of this truck is to bridge and deck washing and dust control to address residents' complaints, which I'm all for. But if the dust is caused by development, can we then bill the developer for cleaning the road? I mean, now they have to pay for somebody to do it.
Mr. Walsh, can you answer that question?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do have a, what's it called? A deposit for dirty roads from development. Our first call is to the developer for them to clean it. If they don't, we can go in there and do it ourselves, either with this facility or with this truck or through a contracted service. But this also allows us, with the bridge deck washing, it is a best practice for bridge maintenance. It allows the bridge facility itself to last longer. And further, we do get a number of requests from community groups through the spring, summer, and fall for a road wash before an event. We call a contractor in. Sometimes they can come in, sometimes they can't. This will allow us to do it ourselves.
Anybody else? And then moving on to the next one. The 2024 utilities ban. Say nothing. The next one. And the 2024 pickup truck for wastewater.
This was one of the ones that's been deferred, isn't it?
That was the 2024 U1124.
Yep.
So,
Oh, this is
no,
724.
the last one was the one that we put out. Everybody good on that? Okay, so I'm at the end of my list, I think. So I'll get back to you here in a second. I just have to get a number from John.
So you're looking at the number that goes in, so it would be, so for tonight's purposes, taking out those 6 vehicles and the $50,000, it brings the number down to 10,356,861. I did that, Jonathan, by deducting 393, which is for the trucks, 393,000, and 50,000 with respect to the park.
Yeah, I had 10,366. 1 second. 60.
Well, I'm gonna go with your number.
64, 60.
I'm gonna go, yeah, I'll go with your number.
60, 68, 67, 60.
And that is
Yeah, the total of the fleet deferrals is 3, and this is for clerk as well. The deferral to the December 6th meeting is those 6 projects listed for a total of $393,000. So that combined with the earlier change to the dog park, dog P23 of 50,000 brings the preliminary budget down to 10,366,861. And then the the general levy, the general capital approval would remain the same at $16,413,800. Does that sound correct?
Thank you, brother.
Ashley, are you able to confirm that? Do you? Okay, so we've passed both the recommendations for those changes, so then we would just be looking to make the one change to the first recommendation for the preliminary, and then the other general capital amount as is.
Did you want me to read that out, or are we all good? Okay, then, your worship, back to you.
We haven't voted yet.
Oh. You really need that? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Back to you, your worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor McDermott. I thought you did a masterful job. The next budget meeting is Wednesday, December the 6th. That's the water and wastewater budget. We're going to also deal with the issue with respect to the vehicles. And January the 31st, Fort Erie Library, assessment analysis and general levy operating budget. And February 7th, if required. Thank you, everyone. Oh, motion to adjourn. Councillor Noyes.
Actually, I had a question, because the capital budget, the report talks about the budget 2025 to 2034 forecast, and we didn't get even a chance to talk about that, but I did want to make a comment on that. I thought we were just approving the 10,000.
We haven't adjourned yet, so if you'd like to speak,
Okay.
it's fair enough.
Well, one of the things, again, I think, reiterating what Councillor Christensen was saying, there's a lot of things on here. There's Parks and Open Space Master Plan. I don't know where these ideas are coming from. I'm sure they're all probably really great, except for the tennis court, but anyway.
Not going to give that one up, are you?
Well, you know what? When you spend more money on tennis courts than you do on an entire ward, yeah, I have an issue. But anyway, and going to that, somewhere in here in 2020, there's some things in 2020, where was it? There's a new south splash, in 2025, there's a south splash pad for $400,000. Where? I requested one in Black Creek, Douglastown. I don't think that's considered a south splash pad. So, yeah, where is it?
Capital forecast
Well, what's the page?
in the memo.
No, just saying this report.
What page are you on, Councillor Noyes?
I'm just, my own notes.
Well, do you have a page number?
Because I wrote it on a separate piece of paper, and I was trying to find it all. It's in 20,
180 of PDF of 223, or page 5 of section 5, in the memo on the agenda.
it's in 2025. Again, I don't, oh, here, on my page, it's page 5, on section 5 of 10-year capital project. It says Fort Erie South Splash Pad. So I don't quite know where that means, because I'd also like to add one for Black Creek, Douglastown. And hopefully it won't take 20 years.
That's not what I have. I'm sorry, what,
I have a paper copy here, and mine is, okay, so mine's on their 2025 budget. And if you go to Planning and Development Services, Parks and Open Space, it's the second last, Fort Erie South Splash Pad, 400,000.
okay.
Where did it come from? And I would like to add to 2025 Black Creek, Douglastown splash pad.
Okay, so first of all, we're done with our business. There is no other business on the agenda. I gave you the courtesy of raising the issue. We'll have to figure out where you could move to add things to the capital forecast, but it won't be tonight.
Fair enough. Again, I thought we were just approving the changes to the amount, not the whole report.
So
Anyway.
what we did tonight was we dealt with the capital budget. We dealt with the preliminary budget. We've dealt with the final capital budget, and then we've dealt with amortization exclusion. We haven't dealt with the capital projects moving forward. And you're on infrastructure services, so that might be something that you could raise there, unless there's an opportunity for that to be raised at some point during the balance of the budget meetings. But
Actually,
there's nothing for other business, and that wasn't really something that we were considering under the report.
Okay, I'm just looking at the report where it says 2024 capital budget and 2025 to 2034 forecast.
Well, I'm
That's-
looking at the recommendation.
Yeah, I see the recommendation. I just didn't know when we were going to discuss
Yeah.
that. Okay, so anyway, it's not a huge issue. I'm sure we'll have an opportunity in the future. And it wouldn't be under infrastructure, it would be under parks, but not under planning and development services.
Okay, well, Councillor, you can maybe speak to Councillor Dubanow about that, and we can get some clarity on the question that you did ask. Yeah, okay, fair enough. And Mr. Hurlovich, you made a note, I hope. Okay. So, Mr. Jansen, you're standing there. Is there a need for you to be there? Okay, so then Councillor Dubanow, would you like to move that we adjourn?
Yes, Your Worship, I'd like to move that the Council Budget Committee adjourn at 9:02 PM this evening.
Those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Lewis, you were up early for that vote, yes? Oh, no.
So where's the splash pad?